Damon Jones is the New York representative for the organization Blacks in Law Enforcement in America. Damon is in our studio tonight. Welcome. It's good to see you.
Good to see you, too.
There have been two police shootings, one in New York and Cleveland, resulting in the deaths of two African-American men. I mean, based on what we've heard, there are lots of incidences across the country, but how common are these sorts of shootings that we were talking about?
Those shootings are common. There are stories that go nationally, and then there's stories that just fall underneath the radar. And unfortunately, the Department of Justice and the federal government need to be more proactive in looking at policies and procedures, especially use of force policies and procedures, and training of officers.
And also a diverse police force as well, which, among other things, is part of the problem, it appears to be, in Ferguson, Missouri. Can you talk about why there are places like Ferguson that have African-American, have a majority African-American number of voters, and yet they have a white police force?
Well, from our organization's perspective, is that African Americans is the only ethnic group that don't have a say in how their community is policed. We try to get the community involved in voting and having elected officials, but also there's a resentment with young African American males and females as qualified to take the job, to actually take the test, because of the fact that what they went through even coming up as a teenager in their encounters with police.
Let me get your reaction to something that happened over the weekend regarding former New York City Mayor Rudi Giuliani. He said in an interview on Meet the Press that the media should focus more on black people killing one another instead of police force diversity. Let's listen to a bit of that.
We've tried very hard to make the police force in New York City as proportionate as we possibly can. We go out of our way to do that. I think we do a pretty good job, not a perfect job. The fact is, I find it very disappointing that you're not discussing the fact that 93% of blacks in America are killed by other blacks. We're talking about the exception here.
Well, look, first of all, go ahead, Michael. No, but this is about a distrust issue.
We are talking about the significant exception. 93% of blacks are killed by other blacks.
How do you react to that?
I think it's sad that a former mayor and a U.S. attorney would make a statement like that. He should actually know the facts, because 83% of white murder victims are killed by other whites. But they do not call that white-on-white crime. And when you have mass killings of white people, they call it a tragedy. So the not being sensitive to the issues in the black community, and then not putting, he was the mayor. And we know a history of the mayor that there were white officers in the black community, and there were hardly any black management in the NYPD underneath his administration.
Well, let me push back just a bit on that. I mean, yes, those figures are correct,
right.
But at the same time, there are problems. He is pointing to a problem of violence in African American communities that continues to this day. I mean, we see them in major cities across America. Is that an issue that needs to be linked to the issue of white police officers shooting black Americans?
Not at all. Crime and violence in communities of color, or in communities that have high poverty rate, you have to look at education, you have to look at economic development, you got to look at job creation. You just can't try to tie that into having a bunch of white cops in the black community. That doesn't make any sense.
You're watching these pictures along with me tonight.
Mm-hmm.
What are African-American police officers, not just in Ferguson, but around the country, saying about this tonight?
Well, I mean, for decades, African-American police officers have been screaming for reform. We say when there's a victim in the black community, we're 4 degrees of separation from that. We know the victim. We know somebody to know the victim. The victim is a family member, or we are the victim, because a lot of black cops are shot or killed while they're off duty, or they're in plain clothes trying to do their job.
Damon Jones, it's good to have you on the program.
Thank you.
Again, it's nice to see you. Thanks very much for your perspective.